Thank you, Gabrielle, and good morning, everyone. And I apologise in advance to those who may have heard some of this before. Gabrielle is going to hand out to you two surveys that I think relate to what I might say. And they are surveys given to young people who went to World Youth Day in Madrid, Rio de Janeiro and Krakow. So that you have the context, my own doctoral research is about Australian participation in World Youth Day generally, and I specifically looked at the areas of the Madrid World Youth Day and the Rio World Youth Day, but I did follow-up research in Krakow. The one thing that comes out very, very clearly is that irrespective of the location of World Youth Day and the numbers who go, the themes are consistent and they are basically the same. And so I suppose this morning I was going to talk a little bit about why people go to World Youth Day. Because from your perspective, if you are in the business of marketing and or preparing people, it's good to know, well, what's the rationale for their decision to go? Other people have written on this issue also. So it's about understanding that Australians have participated in every single International World Youth Day since Buenos Aires in 1987. And since that time, our numbers have changed and grown. But since that time, the demographic of who goes has changed. It changed significantly after World Youth Day in Sydney in 2008. I think the greatest single change is in the number now of school-aged pilgrims who go for very, very different reasons to young adults. So if you are taking a group of young adults, the motivations that they have will be very different to those who are school-aged. Young adults are highly religious. Young adults who go are predominantly female. Young adults are active in parish life. In 2011, one of the criticisms that I had of the pre-World Youth Day research was that there was no option given for attending Mass more than once a week. So what came out then is, well, this is an unusual group of people given the fact that only 10% of Australians attend Mass on a weekly basis. So the thing to be aware of, in the groups that you are taking, they will already be very well connected to the church. They will be involved in parish life. They'll be involved in groups and movements. And in the same way that for a very long period of time, dioceses did not go to World Youth Day. Parishes didn't go to World Youth Day. The genesis of World Youth Day for Australians was the neo-catechumenate movement, Antioch, and a sprinkling of parish groups spread throughout particularly Victoria and New South Wales. But what you've seen, and particularly with the establishment of the National World Youth Day Committee and our Office for Youth in Australia, is that it's now a much more concentrated, deliberate and effective strategy to maximise Australian participation. Australians, unlike others in Europe or North America, cannot simply catch a train to World Youth Day. For the greater part, even Australian participation has changed. Once upon a time, university students would take a week off uni to go to a short, quick, cheap trip to World Youth Day. Now, largely, they've been engaged in the notion of pilgrimage. Some of you would be aware that Australia's participation at Gallipoli 2 days ago was the smallest in number for 15 years. And people said Australians are no longer interested in Gallipoli. I would suggest to you that just as, and Russell would attest to this, just as the fear of terrorism impacted upon Australian participation in Krakow last year, the fear of terrorism in Turkey, which has had more incidents of terrorism than any other European nation, impacted upon our numbers. So we need to work out, how do we attract people to World Youth Day? The numbers for Rio de Janeiro, which will be comparable to the numbers of Panama, were very different. They were down. They were half the numbers of Madrid. It didn't mean that it was a weakened World Youth Day. It just simply meant it was the logistics of transport and the lack of carriers that got them there. And there were some reservations, of course, about the safety of Brazil. So the very nature of a European World Youth Day, which has the attractions of church and church history, the attractions of the Holy Land preceding it, then a World Youth Day experience, then a retreat, is very different to a South or Central American World Youth Day experience. Buenos Aires in 1987 was the only other World Youth Day in this period. Denver in 93, of course, the safety of North America. But again, in recent times, clearly, the pivot for which Pope Francis wishes to give, although Benedict had named Rio, is that World Youth Day is not only a gift for the universal church, World Youth Day is a gift for the local church. So the challenge then is, so who will go to World Youth Day in Panama? Who goes to World Youth Day generally? For Australians, we, I think, have to get out of the mentality that we want the champagne experience for the beer price. We need to be prepared to pay for what we want. And again, and just that's the reality. Otherwise, we're living in a fool's paradise. We would know then that there is a great challenge in bringing people to a World Youth Day unless people really understand what the experience is going to be. Can the week-long World Youth Day be as effective without the pilgrimage? I would suggest no, especially for those who are ill-informed about their faith and searching. I think for adults, yes, they're already engaged in the life of the church. They're already faithful to church teachings, practice their faith in a multiplicity of ways. They can engage. But are they then just a disparate group of strangers who arrives in a strange land? Whereas the benefit of pilgrimage means that people actually bond together. There's a camaraderie that's developed. There's an understanding of the importance of the social interactions. There's an understanding of the importance of what one is actually doing. And those are even more important for those groups that will be the school-aged people. Because the reality is this, that many young people who are actively involved in the life of the church as young adults, they require less formation. And primarily, they are motivated for religious reasons. They want to, although their faith is already good and strong, they still want to deepen their faith and their relationship with God. Whereas if you're looking at the mentality of an adolescent, the mentality of an adolescent is this may well be the first trip outside of Australia, and added is the bonus that they're not accompanying their parents, so that they will go free of the bonds of their parents and even their school to a degree. The idea of seeing the world, making new friends, seeing places they've only ever read about or seen on pictures on Instagram or whatever. So what you have there is a pre-World Youth Day survey. So my concern was, well, why do people want to go? Why would Australians spend $5,000 to $7,000 to $8,000 on a trip for 3 weeks? Now, there are 4 questions that I used to get a sense of the religiosity of a person. And they were, how important is religion to you? Most adults actually said very important. Many young people said of some importance. Very few would say of no importance. because you're not going to spend $7,000 to go to the Hajj or World Youth Day. And World Youth Day is bigger than the Hajj, the biggest single gathering in the history of the world, the biggest regular gathering ever staged, if religion was not important at all. And so young people largely are searching. There has to be at least an openness to religion. They haven't written it off. And the ones who have written it off are really going for the social experience, and they don't even know World Youth Day is a religious event. They just know they're going to Rio. They know they're going to Panama. They know they're going to Italy. Okay, it's incidental that the Pope will happen to be there. So that's not even a part of their discussion point. So as well as the importance of religion, I asked about how they would describe their own faith. Now, there's a difference between committed and involved, because the reality is that all of us in this room, the fact that we're in this room, we're involved. And I would suggest to us that all of us in this room generally are fairly committed. But I would also suggest that even some of us in this room are searching, that we struggle with the big questions in life. We struggle with church teachings in a range of issues when it crosses with us as a human being. And so that even adults are still searching in a way. Mass attendance and prayer, they were the 4 questions I used, because 2 of them are about attitude and 2 of them are about actual practice. And from those questions, I developed a profile about, well, who are the types of people who generally go to World Youth Day? Adults are very homogeneous. When I say this, they are very similar. Regular mass attenders, committed, many of them work for the church. You have the 1 or 2, for example, Catholic events are very different to evangelical church events. At Hillsong, half the people there are strangers, they're newcomers. You don't have that in a Catholic church. Most of the people there still have been sitting in the same pews for the last 10 years. So they are regular attendees and set in their ways about their attendance. Young people they are the most, I would suggest to you, the most diverse group. And that makes them more problematic to prepare for. But also, they are the most exciting group about perhaps opening a pathway to a deepening of their relationship with God. Believe it or not, young people who are searching get more out of World Youth Day than adults who are already on fire. You have the small percentage of adults who are World Youth Day junkies who go time and time again, and we have some that have been to 7 World Youth Days. But that's not the norm largely. So it's about that, how do we over time then discern our preparation? My challenge or my comment to you would be, how do we break new ground and bring new people to World Youth Day? World Youth Day for Pope John Paul II was an expression of the new evangelisation. World Youth Day largely wasn't for Captain Catholics. World Youth Day was for the unchurched. World Youth Day was taken around the world to give young people around the world a taste of the church and its vibrancy. That while those very first events were born out of the groups and movements in Italy, John Paul II believed that all young people were hungering for greater meaning in life. So how do we ensure that in each of our groups and movements we have some unchurched? Surely, if our trajectory is to go up, if we want more than 10% in regular church attendance, it's not about preaching to the already converted. It's about preaching to those who haven't even heard about Jesus Christ yet. It's about inviting those who are on the margins and appealing to those who are searching. One is not going to break ground with those who have already written the message off, but one will break ground with those who are brothers and sisters of people who are already going, or best friends with those who are already going. And I would suggest to you that the mediums of social media are the ideal way to bring in and to network with those people who ordinarily wouldn't want a religious experience. Because what a terrific first religious experience this could be. If this was a person's first experience of church, where people saw that the church was alive with youthful enthusiasm, and where they were able to engage in a range of very cut and thrust Q&A at catechesis sessions, etc. And from the testimonies of young school-aged people who are very honest about the way the world is and their faith is, they see religion differently. That prayer is not archaic, that the Mass does have a beauty, and that even the traditional devotions are as relevant today as when they were first enacted and become a part of our tradition. So it's about the hard sell. Yes, there's always going to be the selling adage of the Holy Land or Italy or Spain or Europe. Okay, the sell might be different in South America, Central America. And I think the greatest opportunity that exists with Panama, as it did with Rio, is the one thing that so many young people who consider themselves disconnected from the church believe is the way that they express their own religiosity, is through the good works of social outreach. So in the letter to James we read that faith without good works is dead. I would argue that good works without faith is also dead. So it's about how do we combine the two? How do we utilise the opportunities perhaps as OHS testing as they might be of social outreach in Central or South America to engage people in a way that they see that they're making a difference in the lives of others and thus are being changed themselves. Because what a beautiful way, at a time when the church is coming under great scrutiny, and justifiably so for some very terrible things, but a great way to also show the good things that the church stands for and the good things that Catholic social teaching represents. But the dangers are, of course, that it cannot become an experience of voyeurism into the misery of others. That social outreach through immersion experiences must be a positive experience for that local community as well as ourselves. That we don't go to local communities to be a pain in the butt and inconvenience them where they are more impoverished by our presence. We need to make a positive difference. And it also needs to be something where we not only gain, but the people that we assist gain. That we don't set up false expectation and that it is realistic. So Central America provides an avenue which I believe would excite and interest people. Because all people, irrespective of age of life or state of life, want to make a difference and live a meaningful life. And for some of them, particularly the younger ones, it will be disconnected to an actual belonging to a faith community. For many of them, the dilemma is, for many adults, the dilemma is they believe but they do not experience belonging. So how do we enliven those in our communities who are believing and faithful Catholics, but who don't have a sense of belonging? And they don't have a sense of belonging often because the people around them don't represent who they are, either through cultural background or more commonly because of age. How hard is it for someone in their teens or 20s to be in a parish regularly when everyone else, the average age is 60 plus. And that often impacts upon our sense of belonging. But the other thing is, other people, this is less common for Catholics and evangelicals, other people have a great sense of belonging, but they don't believe. They don't necessarily accept the precepts of our faith. So it's about, we want a church of people who believe and who belong. It's not one or the other, it is certainly both. So it's about how we work to form a community of believers, and it's the pilgrimage, as Russell, who's more expert in this than I, and Malcolm and Gabrielle and those who have led pilgrimages for much longer periods than I, would attest to. Pilgrimages bond people together. Australians, more so perhaps than many people of other national groupings, seem to bond together very quickly anyway. And perhaps it's because of the tyranny of distance which separates us from others. But that experience of travelling and that experience of the hardships and of waiting in airports, etc. Because sometimes it's those bad experiences which are the moments of comic relief when people look back on World Youth Day. That people actually take good humour in it, that they were in Dubai for several days without their luggage, etc. So all of those things. But I think it's about how we look at this as a time of opportunity. What was very, very explicit was that adults were seeking faith experiences. And because I would suggest to you that even those who are regular in their practice, when they come up against the hardships of life, you know, broken marriages, inability to have children, same-sex attraction, death of loved ones, their faith is tested. You know, the faith is tested on a human level. And ultimately, like Augustine, they are ultimately searching for God, searching for meaning. And you know, these experiences help in that. And we have to, I think, accept that even if the person is going for the social, touristic reasons, take them and form them and change them. And that would be the opportunities, that to deepen those who are already, you know, alive with the faith, because their witness is imperative to the group that they're leading. The pilgrimages, one of the key things, one of the key criticisms, and this is across 1,800 people, 3 World Youth Days, there was not enough downtime to debrief at the end of the day. We did not have enough time to process what we were doing. We were rushing about too much for some very significant epiphany moments. We just didn't have a chance to process what had happened. Because when we all get back, we all get thrown into the mix of university or work or school, and it's all too late, it's all over. And it becomes a distant memory, and in time the memory of the good time fades. So it's about injecting those times. I would suggest that, you know, in the formation of people, I would throw, because the new evangelisation, and John Paul II called young people to Rome 2 weeks after he uttered the words to the bishops of Latin America in Haiti in 1983 about new ardour, new energy, new means of expression. It's about throwing the doors wide open to the church, wide open, and bringing people in, and about just giving them an entry point that they are comfortable with. And whether it's the person's attracted to the person with the sign of free hugs or perpetual Eucharistic adoration. And you know, the other thing is we should not discount that people are converted. One of the highlights of males, adolescent males for World Youth Day, was the sacrament of reconciliation. That's what they put as a highlight. The big events make a difference, but not for everybody, because the big events are millions of people. So the vigil in particular, the silence and the candlelight and the adoration, and it's the aesthetics of the moment. And I remember going to Auschwitz, and you've got hundreds of people wandering around through Auschwitz, and you could hear a pin drop, that there was silence, that people automatically just move into a period where they know they're in a different place and a different moment. And whether it's in the silence that they experience God, or whether it's in the cacophony of noise on Copacabana Beach or somewhere else, I'm not sure if Panama has a beach, but whatever it is, it's that moment of being surrounded. Can Pilgrimage and World Youth Day be separated? I would suggest to you no. Because the highlights of World Youth Day were outstripped by one thing. And on the back, very back page of the pre-World Youth Day survey, it said there, it asked people to rate the importance that they give to it. The pilgrimage to World Youth Day in the post-World Youth Day section was rated as the most significant event across the board. It was the most significant event. Out of 1,800 people, very few people, I think 4 people, 4 out of 1,800 gave it a rating of neutral or lower when rating it. The pilgrimage was rated incredibly highly by people. And I think as formators, as pilgrimage planners and leaders, if we know that the pilgrimage is the time when the soil is tilled, if the pilgrimage is the time when people break out of cliques and into broader friendship circles, when pilgrimage is time when they bond together as a group spiritually, when pilgrimage is a time when kids who have never been into a church get accustomed to daily prayer and daily mass, the preparation's done, the groundwork's done for an experience of a lifetime. So look, I will send to Malcolm and Gabrielle the findings of the pre-World Youth Day research to you, and it gives 10 points that I think were central to the findings of the pre-World Youth Day research, because that's where we're at, we're in the pre-part. And for me, 6 of them would have been really crucial to have known beforehand in that. But Gabrielle, time permitting, maybe 2 questions perhaps, if there were any questions or any comments. Yes.
Sorry, Anthony. Was there a difference between rural communities and city communities in the response?
So the question was about, was there a difference between rural communities and urban communities, and the answer is no. The answer is no. Look, there is a consistency, there's a consistency in the findings of the research, and it's one where I suppose it fits in with broader sociological research, and I think it presents us some challenges. It presents me with a challenge as a schoolie. Largely, the results were almost identical, irrespective of where people were in Australia, because I postcoded a lot of the research. Females get more out of this event than males. Younger people get more out of this than older people. Ethnics get more out of this than Anglo-Saxons. And so I suppose one of the things that I looked at as a teacher is, and dealing with young people all of the time, what place do we find for young women and their active participation? And if they go and they have a wonderful time, how do we respond to that when they come back? And how do we keep that fire burning? And how can people be alive? But broadly speaking, the sociological research affirms that anyway. Women are more involved in churches than men, and ethnics more involved than Anglos. The ones, as I said to you, I think the surprise to you will be, and this is which is where, for priests in particular, for bishops in particular, if young people who don't know the church find World Youth Day a mind-blowing experience and find it more appealing than the older people who are in the pews every Sunday, then we need to maximise how many we get there. Because we have a significant chance to connect people who, without this experience, will never be connected. Because if we really want to talk about the new evangelisation, John Paul II in Redemptoris Missio identified 3 forms of evangelisation in 1990. The traditional definition of those who have never heard of Jesus Christ. The evangelisation to the communities that are already alive and on fire, but to those which have received the word and where the word has died and it's become stale and stagnant and people are lukewarm. We can change the way people see their faith and see themselves. And therefore, we need to get everybody, as many people there as possible. One other question.
All right, I'll ask one.
Okay, thank you, Father Greg.
I paused for a moment to see if
Yeah.
there's anybody else.
Right.
One of the things about that you've indicated is the number of already active people who go. So there's already a connection. One of the things about World Youth Day is the liveliness of the liturgies, particularly the importance of music, animation, good readers, whatever else might go into those. What advice then do you give youth ministers about what might need to be embodied in parish communities to somehow continue that connectedness?
I suppose my advice to youth ministers and to bishops of dioceses is get your priests over there. Get them to see what World Youth Day is about and get them to experience World Youth Day. Like when Cardinal Pell in 2005 said to me, I want you to go to Cologne to go to World Youth Day, I asked, what's World Youth Day? I'd never heard of it. And because I was in a private school and it wasn't a big thing and wasn't on my radar, yet I'm a practising Catholic. I'd not experienced it. And it was very different. And not all things appealed to me. And this is the thing. I think World Youth Day is big enough to appeal to people of all walks of life and all expressions of faith. Like there's something there for everybody. Like you could not go and not find something that appeals to you. And it's exactly what you said, Father Greg, because in the reports that have been done by the Pastoral Research Office in Australia here about strong parishes, and it particularly comes from the US, the quality of the liturgy and the quality of music and the opportunities to engage are crucial for people's the value that they attribute to that experience. Because only really the switched-on faithful will necessarily connect to the whole transcendental nature of what they're experiencing. The others it will be an emotional experience or a sensate experience. So we have to have them having a taste of the divine, but in a way which appeals to the senses and speaks to the heart. Okay, thank you.